Okay, so we are week 20, day one. It's the last week of React. I know we're looking forward to finally getting into personal projects. Today is just kind of going to be another review day, going over things you have learned. The README today just restates kind of what props, state, and effects are, and then gives you an all-in-one example. And this is it. This is all the README is today. Um, we're gonna walk through creating our own app that has each of these components in there, and then also touch on routing again, because we just went over routing on Saturday. Routing's important to understand so you can navigate through your app instead of having it all on one page. So we'll revisit that briefly too. I will not be following along with this example. Definitely feel free to take a look at it if you want and just try to refresh your memory. But we're gonna start with our own. I did already the create like Vite something at latest. I always have to look up exactly how to word that. And then I did my npm install. Here I've got my base React app. So as we know, main is like kind of the root of our project here. This is where it calls our app component. And our app component is what has the meat of everything we're going to be doing for the most part. Let's go ahead and prep it so we can work in it. I don't want all this extra stuff in here. So today, and I'm not going to use their CSS either. So I'm kind of basing this off of what your challenge for today is going to be as well. So we're going to just create this web page, and I'm kind of keeping in mind some of the things you're going to have to do for the challenge tonight. And one of that is include some nice CSS design. So I'm not going to call the app CSS in here or import from there, and I'm not going to import the index.css either. Because I don't know about y'all, but I hate CSS. Everybody has their own strengths. CSS is not one of mine. First things I want to do is I am going to use React Bootstrap to give me CSS so I don't actually have to write CSS and make everything look nice. So first things first, I come to my React Bootstrap, the most popular front-end framework rebuilt for React. Awesome. Because we can bootstrap HTML, right? That's a thing. Let's get started. So it looks like we have to install these two components, and then we can import, let's see, style sheet, CSS. It looks like this is the CSS that I'll import that will direct. So now this is a third-party library. You all learned about that, I think, last week, how to kind of bring in outside libraries that pretty much they write all the, let's see, maybe components, but they kind of write all the backend to make your stuff look pretty for you, so you don't have to write any CSS. They'll just use their style, and they give you different things you can do, like this is an accordion, so you can have a basic one, or you can have a collapsible one, and you can see that opens up. So they have all different things that they have done for you, so you don't have to spend too much time on it. So that's why I'm using a third-party library. If you like CSS, feel free, knock yourself out. But I am just going to install Bootstrap and use that in my project so that I have to do as little CSS as possible. Let's make sure I'm in the right spot first. I am, because we want these packages to be installed in our node modules. So we are going to npm install our React Bootstrap and Bootstrap. Perfect. All right, those are installed. So now part of the documentation also showed how I can import these styles, because even though I've installed it, I'm not importing these styles anywhere. We saw in here that we had the import that style sheet, which we wrote in our CSS file. So I'm just going to import, like they tell me to. Actually, no, I'm not gonna put that in. the app.jsx because I want these styles to be used like across the board, right? I don't want it just in app. I want it for everything. So I'm actually going to drop it in my main.jsx instead. That's why does that hang? Okay. Anyways, so I'm going to drop it right here. That way, everything that's here is going to get these styles. And so that means pretty much my whole app is going to get these styles. All right. Awesome. So I'm going to start with that. Now, what am I making? I decided I'm going to make, we can kind of see here, instead of just doing the Vite project, when I started this up, I've named it Coffee Shop. So today we're going to make a coffee shop webpage where I'm going to have a home page and I'm going to have a banner or a navigation bar on the top of the page that's going to persist across all the pages. And then I'm also going to have like a menu. And then when I click on an item, it will bring me up to like a detailed view of that item for the coffee shop. So let's go ahead and make our pages so that we can kind of get an idea on how this is going to be laid out, how our app is going to be laid out. So I already said I want a home page, and I want a navigation bar, but that navigation bar is going to be on everything. So I will probably make that navigation bar a component, right? Since that's going to be visible on everything I'm working in and not just my home page, because that makes the most sense. And then when I say I have a home page and I have a menu page, those are pages. Did y'all go over pages before, or I guess with the React router? No? Okay. So when you visit a URL, pull up our curriculum here. So all these slashes afterwards, basically, these are like different pages, right? Different URLs we can go to. We can go to our base evening and weekends. When we click in repositories, we can see it throws on repositories. And this is a totally different layout. These are like what you kind of think of when you think of different pages for React. So it's like a different web page. And they're going to have different URLs so that you could navigate back and forth through them. And we're going to do that using browser router with React, which I will show you how to set up. I mean, we touched on React router on Saturday, but it was a very intricate lesson and a lot of extra. We just want to set up different URLs that people can go to. And when they visit that URL, my React app that I have, or my React component that I want to show on that URL is what's showed to the user. So that is what we're going to do right now. So typically when you think of different web pages you want to have, you will make a folder, kind of like how, let's go ahead and throw in our components folder because we know we're going to make some components. That's what makes React so great. But we're also, and this is all under source, we're also going to make a pages folder. And this is where we're going to stick like any web page we want to make. Why does it say canceled? I feel like, so my React app is still running, even though I quit out of it earlier when I was putting this example together and I was running it in the browser. It's like, oh man, I don't know why we'll see, we'll cross that bridge when we get there if it's still running. Anyways, so I said I wanted a home page that people, when they visit my app, they come to my home page. And then I want a menu page with all my coffee drinks on it. And then I want a page that when you click on a coffee, it brings up like a detailed view of that coffee. So those are 3 different pages that I plan on making. I plan on making a home page, home.jsx. I'm going to make a menu.jsx page. And then I'm going to also make So the detail page, even though I'm going to be clicking on it, like in the menu, I'm going to click on something to bring me to this detail page. It's still a separate page that is going to render differently. I don't want my menu page, like I don't want to click the menu item and have it just pull up something down below everything. I want it to navigate to a completely new page so I can focus on just that item. So that's why I'm making it its own page. So here we have, we'll make it coffee detail.jsx. Okay, so these are all the pages that I want my app to have. And like I said, I want a navigation bar that's going to be visible on everything. So I'm going to throw that in my components. I'm going to have a nav bar. Don't ask what, I just like calling it a nav bar. So I'm going to have that component I will throw up as well. Okay, so let's get back to our app.jsx because this is where we throw in most of our components that we're working with, right? And this is pretty much what's going to be displayed initially. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. So with browser router, first thing you have to do is in your main.jsx, you see we have this strict mode going on. We can see it's like a common, lets you find bugs in your development early on. We're not, we don't want to use strict mode when we are deploying. We're going to change this to use browser router, which we're going to have to import. And when we try to import, we're going to see it's not going to show up because we're also going to have to npm install it. But we would need to import browser router. From React. And we can see it doesn't pop up. We don't have anything called React Router DOM in here. So that's a key that I need to install that. So let's go ahead and npm install our React Router DOM. And that should be familiar from Saturday, because I think when you were learning on Saturday, you still had to initially install it. So now, if I were to go back, React, we can see it pops up in my list of modules that are available to me. So we're going to import browser router from the DOM, and this is in your main.jsx. I know we said don't touch this, but we're going to touch it. We're going to change. We're not going to use strict mode with our app now. We're going to use browser router for this. And the documentation, if you were to visit the React browser router documentation, it shows you how to do this. It kind of tells you where to put this first part in order to get routes working correctly in your app. So in order to use routing and to give different URLs for each of our components, we're going to wrap our app in this browser router. And this lets us access two things. It lets us access routes and route. And there's a difference between the two. But we will come over to app.jsx now. So that's all we do in main. That's all we have to do in main is just make sure we wrap it in browser router. Now we can let that be. Now, when we come back to our app, so I want the nav bar to be visible all the time. So what should I do with that component? Do we think I should wrap that in stuff, or should I just throw it in here? How do we want to lay this out? Any ideas?
Maybe just throw it in a div.
Yep. Yeah, I like that. And we could throw it in a div, but we don't have to. I'm just going to throw the component in here. But I like that because this, oh, is it not picking it up? Because I haven't made the, hang on, let's go ahead and do this and just make the base here. Call this nav bar. But this is something we want on it persists across every page that I go to, and it shows up across everything. So, oh, no, so with that in mind, that seems like something I can probably throw in here because app is, it's always rendering because it's called by this root component. So if I throw it in my app one, this will render all the time. So now here we're going to do navbar where I'm going to push my fancy tab and it will all of a sudden add this import as well up there. Awesome. Close it out. So now I have a navbar component. There's nothing in it yet, but we'll get to that in a minute. So now, how can I set up paths, like routes, to all these different pages I'm about to write? I don't want to stick each page component in here because I don't want them all to render at the same time, right? I just want to click on something and move to different pages. So like my nav bar is going to have links to these different pages. And then there will probably be a button as well somewhere that has the option to get me to these different pages. So this is where our browser router and our routes are going to come into play. So I'm going to wrap this in a div because I want it separated from the nav bar. And I want to kind of like containerize it. So I'm actually going to make this a container div. And this is just a regular HTML bootstrap. There you can make it like a container and it kind of adds padding and makes it a little bit separate from other components. So I am going to add that div right here, right underneath my nav bar. And now within this div, we are going to make some routes. And in our routes, we will make a route and have a path for the route. And the path is going to be, what do we want this URL to be when we visit this page? So most of the time you'll start off with just a slash because when you visit a page, there's usually nothing at the end of it. Like if you go to google.com, it'll bring you to main Google. There's no slash like images or anything else after it. It's just empty. So this is usually what you'll see for your home paths is just ending with a slash. So with every route, you say what path it's going to have, and this is going to be the URL ending. And then you also have to say what element it's going to point to. And the element is what page component you want this path to go to. Okay, so I imagine that when you just first come to my website and you don't put anything else following my URL, you just have it ends with a slash, that's going to be my home page. So here I am going to simply do the home component. And of course, oh, I have to wrap that. No, that's right. Home is in there. Okay, and then we need to close out our route. Now, in order to pull the home component, well, I call it component, but it's the page, the home page, we're going to have to import that. So let's go ahead and, oh, it's not pulling up easy because I didn't have my base code in there. Let's go to home and just go ahead and function home return. So pages look just like components. They're going to have a function and the function name, and then we're going to export default and of course the return afterwards. So pages look like components. We just keep them separated so that you know what this is versus what the components are. Like components are reusable. You're going to throw them all over the place. The page, you're not going to reuse typically. You're pretty much just going to refer to it in your routes here for the most part. Okay, so I've got home. Let's go ahead and import our home page. Okay, so that's one route. So now when I spin up this app, let's go ahead and try it. Let's just put in here a header. Home. We'll just say home so we know it's on the home page. And then in our nav bar, let's go ahead and just do nav bar. So we can see these components and we can see them working. But what do you think my app is going to look like when I pull it up and go to just the, let's see, npm run dev. When I go to just this URL down here, this localhost port 5174 slash, what do we think my app is going to look like?
Whatever you got in your home.jsx file.
Okay. Yep, exactly. What about this though? The nav bar up here.
Oh, yeah, that'll show up as well. Should show up.
Yep, should show up. What are we doing here? What is not liking? App is not defined at main.jsx. Let me see if I missed something here. Main.jsx. Oh, I didn't. I deleted that too. I saw import app. Don't delete the app import from main.jsx. It couldn't find our component there. Okay, so now if we come back here, let's see, what do we got? Routes is not defined at app. Hang on. Oh, yep, I forgot something else too. So in order to use routes and route, it's available to us, but I have to import it. Everything you want to use, you're going to have to import. So we're going to import route and routes from React router DOM. Okay. Kind of like we did in our main, where we imported browser router from React router DOM. In order to use routes and route, we also had to import those from React router DOM as well. Now we should be good. We will see though, because we are an expert at reading our console. So yes, now when I refresh, we can see when I visit the app, we have our nav bar. And then since this is essentially, got the slash at the end, it's just empty. There's no pathing afterwards. We can see our home component is rendered right here. So it's working as intended. We will fill in what we want on each page shortly, but let's go ahead and get the rest of these pages hooked up. So you're going to follow the same structure for each additional page you have, but we need to change the path because the path needs to be different from the others so we can have different URLs to go to. So the next one let's think about is menu. So the logical thing I would think is just make this slash menu. So now when they go to my local host port slash menu, let's go ahead and point them to the element menu, which again, let me throw these in each of these now so that it's easier. Because I can't do my fancy import thing if I don't have the component identified here and exported. Okay, so we have menu, and then we're going to also do the same for coffee detail. You might as well always throw in use state. You never know when you're going to use that. We'll be importing useEffect as well eventually. So this one will be coffee detail. Export coffee detail. Okay, so now when I'm on my app, I should be able to put this element in and it will auto. So we're going to the menu, which it doesn't auto import. That's fun. And then make sure after you do your element, so it's weird, you have to put these curly brackets and then put the component in there, but make sure you close your route tag as well. Otherwise it'll keep giving you errors. So now we're going to import our menu. Why is it not? Menu. Is this like a protected word maybe? Yeah, this might be, let me try something else. Let's do, so another way, you can have it split up like that, but you can also just export default function as well. Okay, let's see if this works. There. It just didn't like, I don't know. This is probably some sort of protected word, most likely. I don't know. But I went ahead, instead of having it separated, like usually you do the function up here and then you do your export below, I just did it all in one line, export default function menu. So it takes care of everything all in one. So you can do that as well. It's typically what I do, but I was trying to follow kind of how this is structured for ease. Either way works though. Okay, so I wonder if we'll have the same issue with coffee detail. We will see. Okay, so now we should be able to go to my app. Let's pull it up. And we're gonna close this console. We don't need that. We should be able to go to this /menu. And when we go to this /menu, it should bring me then to the menu page and show that down here. But the nav bar persists because we have told it to stay. This component is staying put the whole time. It's just these routes down here that will change. So we can see that does indeed bring us to our menu page that we have laid out. And again, last one we're going to do is we're going to route to the, we're going to call this, what did I call it earlier? I like to keep it similar. Okay, so this one's going to be menu, and kind of like you lay out your like Django REST framework endpoints, you can add in a oh, what is it called? Parameter? No, when it's part of the URL, I have to look it up. Yeah, I'll have to look that up in a second. But wait, I'm gonna just Google it real quick. It's a parameter, but that's like a query. That's not the name I'm looking for. I think there's a different name. I can't find the name of it right now. The only thing that's coming to mind is parameter, but I usually see that with like query selectors. If anybody else knows or thinks of it, but this is allowing me to put in like a number at the end of this URL, and it will, I'll be able to use it in my page. And we'll see that in a second. And you see this a lot with like detail pages, pages that when you select an item and you want to bring up more details on that specific item, usually you like give it an ID number and you'll be able to like look at the details of that ID. So we're going to put that in our URL because that's how we're going to work with it in our page to go ahead and filter out everything else and just look at this particular item. And this is in our detail. This is going to be our coffee detail page. So let's get that element hooked up. Also does not like the, put it all in one. It's function. Okay. We'll go. And then we close out our tag. Okay, so all of Saturday's lecture, and this is pretty much all I want you to know, is how to wrap your, at the main.jsx, wrap your app in browser router, and then in app.jsx, you can define routes and then put down which each route path is, and then which element or page it's looking at in your React app. So now again, I will be able to go to this copy detail page with this menu / a number. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we have menu already. So let's throw up like 2 or 20. So we can see it brings us to our copy detail page. So we can put in any number actually, and it will do the same thing because we've told it to go ahead and accept a number at the end of this URL. And we're going to work with that in our page in a second. Any questions so far on how to do the browser router and the routes? Super easy.
No.
Okay, so routes are important because we're going to use them in our nav bar, right? Our idea is we're going to have this nav bar at the top of our screen, and it's probably going to say something like home, menu, and we can click between the two and go to these different pages. Okay, so let's go ahead and start working on our nav bar then. So because I have used Bootstrap, I can actually just import some stuff from Bootstrap to help me out here. So I'm going to import navbar and nav and container from React Bootstrap. So I told the app that we can use React Bootstrap in our main. I went ahead and imported that CSS style sheet so we can use it. So we're importing from that style sheet. We're going to bring in nav, bar, nav, and container. And then we're also, since we need to make these links clickable and route to different areas, we're going to import nav link from React Router DOM. And this is so that we can use those routes we identified in our nav bar. Okay, so this is stuff you will find as you're looking through different third-party libraries, or even just with the HTML on what tags to use and how to set them up. So I'm going to use navbar. And within navbar, I'm going to make a container. This is all stuff that I found on the React Bootstrap documentation, and they have code snippets. So it's a very nice documentation to use, and you can just copy and paste and use at your will. So here we're going to use navbar brand, and we're going to set that as a nav link. And again, this is just how it's structured. I can't really tell you why are we doing. This is just the syntax that this third-party library expects for these. So navbar.brand, we're going to set that nav link to. This is the brand is basically what you'll see on the side, like the name of the company, basically. And we're going to have that go to, let's see, to just our home page. So we're going to have our brand name over here on the side, and then when people click on it, it's going to bring them to our home page, is what this is doing. We're setting that brand as a nav link to our home page. And then we are going to make that called Cozy Cafe. That is our brand. And now we're going to use a nav bar toggle. And the nav bar collapsed. Again, I was just playing around with this stuff to find something that I thought looked cool, and I'm just plugging it in. Now, the important part here is the nav tags. So this is where your actual navigation is going to happen. This is just some styling that I added around it based on the library. Why is that not indented in? That's fine. Okay, so within nav, this is where we're going to have some nav links. And it's kind of like we did with this navbar.brand. With a nav link, we're going to make it as a nav link to, and the first one I'm going to have is home, because yeah, when they click on the brand name or whatever, it's going to bring them home, but it's typically, you also see a home thing as well, like a button to push home. So we're going to go ahead and add another one that's going to that path, and we're going to name that one home. And then the next one we're going to link, and this one is going to go to our menu. This is also going to be a nav link, and it is going to r/menu. And then we're going to label that. So in between, this is what you're going to see on the screen. Let's go ahead and check it out and see if that's kind of coming together. So it is. Okay, so we can see that's the name we got going on. And when we click it, it brings us to our home page, which is just the slash. When we click home, also it doesn't go anywhere because we're already on there. When we click menu, it brings us to the slash menu. So this is just what I found in documentation on how to structure their nav bar and how to lay it out. And most of them will show you where you insert your routes when you work with nav bars. Any questions so far on setting up the nav bar with the routing? So because we're using browser router and our routes here, we don't have to call the components right here. We just point it to the URL that these pages live at. Okay, awesome. So I have my, let's see, my nav bar. Let me bring it back up. And it's doing what I expect it to. It's bringing us to the different locations. Perfect. So now we can start working on our actual site and how it looks. Let's start with the home page. That's where everybody's going to come up to first. I'm going to try to move this along, keep it pretty simple so that we can spend time on the important part. So let's make this welcome to Cozy Cafe. And we're just going to throw in a like, browse our hot coffees. And then I'm going to have a button as well. And we can see when I tabbed over this button, it automatically imported it from React Bootstrap, because every HTML tag that I'm using that has a component already put together in React Bootstrap, it's going to try to bring in that styling and how it's been worked at, how it's working in React Bootstrap. So this one, this button, I'm going to make this as a link. So similar to nav, I need to import this as well. Similar to navlink, we can see it's imported from the same location, but it's not a nav bar, so it's just a link. That's the difference here. So, but it's the same setup. We're going to do this as a link, and then we have to a location. So this is just going to bring us, so I want to browse our hot coffees. I'm going to have a button that brings us to the menu. Go to menu. Okay, so let's see how my homepage looks now. Awesome. So now I've got this route, this link routing to this slash menu, which we've routed on our app.jsx. So now when I click this, it brings me to my menu page. So perfect. That button's working. My nav bar routing is working. Everything's linking together nicely. Okay. Next up, let's make our menu page. So I have an API that I found and was working with here. Looks kind of crazy, but it's kind of nice when you visit a lot of APIs. If you visit the endpoint you're going to be trying to do a GET request from, you will get the JSON that's being returned. So let's make this pretty print and see. So this API is what I'm going to use to throw up all of our copies. And this would be your Django REST framework endpoint. So if you hit one of your backend endpoints from your Django REST framework, you should be getting a JSON output, right? So we're kind of imagining that instead of hitting a third-party library, this is something we've put in our database and we are serving up to the front end. So we can see if I hit this endpoint, these hot coffees, we're going to get titles, descriptions, ingredients, images, and an ID number with it. And we can see there's multiple in here. There's quite a few. So I'm going to work with this API and I want to pull in these drinks for my menu. I'm going to use the picture that they give me, and I'm probably going to use their title. I'm going to use pretty much all this stuff to lay out like little pictures of these drinks on my menu page. And then one step further, after we do like a title and an ingredient, or not ingredients, maybe I might throw that on there. But at least title and image. I want to click on these and then I want to pull up like a more in-depth description and all that sort of stuff. So thinking about how we're going to be working with our data is important because we're going to be doing some GET requests, right? We're going to be doing some fetches in our JavaScript, and we got to know where to put it. Like, do I want to put it, like, first instinct, I want to put it on my menu page, right? I want to like get all those coffees and throw them up on my menu page. But then if you start coding and start thinking about it, when you click on each item, it's also going to open up the detail page, which will have all the same information that we're going to be pulling from the API. So how do we want to handle this? Where do you all think I should do my fetch? Should I have a few? Should I have one? What do we think I should do? Because from the sound of it, it sounds like menu and coffee detail are going to have a lot of similar items in it.
You it'd be best if you're gonna have a lot of similar items in it, you can do a API.jsx file and create a call for those there,
Yep,
and then
that's
and then
certainly.
import it.
Yes, you can do that. I'm going to keep it simpler. I'm going to integrate it in somewhere else so we can see the like passing down props a little bit easier. But as you're working on your personal projects, yes, you'll probably pull it out into a separate API file or component. But so we figure that we want to do one API call, right? Because we only need this data once, and then we can just keep working with it in different places. But if I do the call in menu, it's going to only give me the information here. I don't have coffee detail as a child because I don't want the details popping up below. I want to open a whole new page. But I still want those details, or I want all the coffee information here. So when we look at where could I do the API call and just pass things down, we could do that right here in app as well. So I'm going to do just one call right away when they come to my web page, And then I'm going to pass down all this data that we get. I'm going to store it in a state. And then I'm going to pass it down as props to the menu component and the coffee detail component. So that way we're not making multiple API calls, because some APIs have limitations, right? You can only do a couple calls, or not a couple calls, but you can only do so many calls per minute, or, they have different limitations. So you don't want to just spam APIs with multiple calls to their endpoints. So I want to just do this once when my app loads up, which I'm going to do just in this app page, because this is the base, this is home base. So I'm going to do it once here, save it in a state, and then pass it as props to my menu and coffee detail to work with. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to try to keep it as simple as we can. Let's see. So we are going to, I'm going to just, let's see, let's make our states first. We're going to save, these are going to be copies, right? We're querying the API to get copies. So let's make our states, or our state, we're going to name this copies, and we're going to have set copies. We're going to use state, and this should be getting pretty repetitive for the syntax, and we're going to set it to just be an empty list at first, because we see that this API call gives us a list. It's a list of dictionary items that have key value pairs. So this list, I imagine I'm going to do a fetch for, and then I'm going to set it in this coffees, coffee state. Now, good practice is, while waiting for your API stuff, you typically don't want, you want to give some sort of indication that you're waiting for that data to load instead of seeing blank screen or nothing moving or happening. So I'm also going to make a state that's going to be called loading. And this is going to help me with either conditional rendering or something of the sort like that, kind of managing what the users see while we're waiting for this call to go through. We're going to start it off with true. No, we're going to set it off to false first, because this is going to be like an is loading. So is loading true or false? So nothing's loading right off the bat. Okay. Let's do our API call now. So for these, we use useEffects, right? And yes, it imported it. So useEffect, you need to import from React. And we set this up. I have it handy on my other screen for the syntax, because I can't ever remember how exactly to set up my useEffects, but they're fat arrow functions. I know that much. And then we have our function we're actually doing in here. And then we have our dependency down here, which I want this to run when we first load this page, and then not again. We're just going to grab the data from the API, and then we'll keep working with it. We don't need to make multiple calls. So my dependency is, we're going to just have this empty list, because that's run at the first render and not again, right? What if I wanted it to run based on a state? How would I signify that for my useEffect? What would I change this to down here? Anybody remember? If I want this useEffect to be dependent on one of my states changing.
You put one of the state names in there, whether copies or loading, or you can
Exactly.
put both.
Yeah, exactly. You can have it dependent on both. And then it would be an either or type thing. It's not an and, it's if one or the other. Okay, so with this, we're gonna make a fetch data. And this I just took verbatim out of our useEffect lesson to keep it similar, so y'all can just copy and paste and change things you need to change. So this is going to be another fat arrow function where we're going to, so something I did differently is I'm doing a try catch. You're going to see this a lot in the real world because if you just do like try to do a fetch data without having any like error handling, things break all the time. So a try catch you'll do to try to make this call. If it fails for any reason whatsoever, the catch is like kind of your backup plan. So what can we do instead of getting this API data? So that way your app doesn't crash and break and have like a 404 or something weird happening on the screen. So we're going to try and with our try, first things first, before I make my call, my API call, I'm going to set this loading state to true because we're going to start trying to load this data now. So let me set loading to true. And then we were going to do our constant response equals await fetch to our endpoint, which lets me copy and paste that. Okay. Then our constant data is going to be await the response.json. And I also did something a little different. So this is the API call. The data is going to be our JSON returned from the API call, right? So we want to put that in our state. So we're going to set copies. And typically you would just do set copies with data. But let's say we had tons of copies being returned. Let's say we had like 100 plus. We don't here, but what if we had a ton and we didn't want to deal with all that for whatever reason? We can just slice this. So I'm going to slice the first 12, 11, 12. I always forget if it's inclusive, but I'm cutting it down basically. I don't want everything back. I just want a little bit back of this. You won't do this most likely, but just for demonstration purposes and to show what you could do, possibilities, I decided to do that. Okay, so this is what we want to try to do. We want to try to get our API data and store it in our copies state. Now we're going to make a catch. So if there's an error that happens, I want to set error. Oh, no, go back to set error. It's not gonna like click out there. To error message. So that way this gives me something useful to work with. I'll be able to see like an error message that I can figure out what went wrong. May or may not break the app, but that's okay. At least it will give me an error. It won't just like do nothing. It'll show me what went wrong. Hopefully nothing goes wrong. So there is my try catch in my fetch data. So we made our fetch data function. Now we actually have to call it because that's what we've been doing. We've been defining our functions and then we've been calling our fetch data function. Yes, Art, do you have a question?
Yeah, after line 20, would it be a good idea to maybe console log that error so it's very visible if we need it?
Oh, it will go there too. It'll go. That's what the set error does. Oh, I wish I could click on it and bring it up. No, I can't. But it will show up in the console as well. But you could throw it in if it makes you can do a console log if you want. Error dot message. But I think it's redundant. I'm like 99.9% sure it shows up in the console because that's the part of that's the point of these set errors and error messages. You'll typically save these to a log as well. But it usually throws up in the console. Good question though. Okay, so after we fetch data, so I have this loading thing. I said while we're trying to get this data from our API, go ahead and set this loading state to true. If we can successfully complete this function, I want to go ahead and then set that loading back to false. So that way we know that it's done trying to get data and it's done loading. Okay, so now I have my API call. When I visit my page, let's go ahead and where should I do it? I'm gonna right underneath here. Let's console log copies and just make sure that this API call is working. Okay, because we're making the call and we're setting that state to copies. And we will probably take a break in a little bit too to make sure, or to let you all relax and have some time between all this. Oh, so it did it right away. So every time I refresh, we could see, oh, that's empty. Why is that empty? It should not be empty because it's my first time visiting the page. Oh, what is going on? It's probably something with my promise here. Line 20 console log copies. Well, we'll roll with this. I saw it briefly before I refreshed and then it went away. So we'll keep rolling with it and see how it looks when we start working with the data. Okay, so this should be working. We will go ahead and confirm that shortly. At first, yes, and then we're going to fit. Okay, everything looks right. So in theory, then this is grabbing our API data and saving it to copies. We need to use those copies in my menu page, and we're going to use the copy information in our detail page. So let's go ahead and make these props that we're going to pass down to these components. So this should be a review. You can you give the variable name or the prop name that it's going to be referred to within the component, and then you assign it whatever variable or state you have here that you want to pass down, or function, right? We could pass down functions as well. So let's do that with both. We're gonna have this one pass down coffees as well. So now both of these pages will get the coffee data passed to them. Of course, if we're passing a prop down, what else do I have to do? Can I just come to menu and start working with coffees? Nope. What do I have to do in order to start working with the prop?
You got to add it inside of the parentheses and menu.
Exactly. So we're gonna throw in coffees up here. Okay, and it's grayed out just because we're not using it, but let's throw it in coffee details as well. This is giving us access to that prop that we're passing down. Okay. So let's start there. Let's go to our menu. Actually, do y'all want to take a break before we? Yeah, okay. Let's take a break, and then when we come back, we'll kind of flesh out our menu and our coffee detail pages, and then I will let you do the challenge for the night. Okay, I'll stop recording. Pause it. Okay, so we're back at it from the break. The rest of this, I'm just gonna, like I said just a minute ago off camera, gonna just kind of get through the menu and coffee detail pretty quickly because a lot of it is just styling and working with the information. The important part that I want you to understand is how we are making one API call and then we are passing down the data we get from that call that we've saved in a state. We are passing it as a prop to the copy detail and the menu components to work with. Now, copy detail will have that. I'll show you how we're going to use the number at the end of the URL to grab the data we need from our coffees. So let me go ahead and in our menu component here or page, I'm going to import some styles that I'm going to use to make a really pretty display for my copies that I'm about to have. I'm going to import row, column, card, and button from React Bootstrap. We have a question.
Yes, basic one. I'm sorry I missed it, but when you're importing, when is it necessary to use the curly brackets, and when do you just import directly?
Um, so you use the curly brackets when you're pulling from like modules. So all these like useEffect, useState, route, all this stuff is from a module that we have installed, like React is base. But so then no curly brackets are used around components or pages or things that we are creating right here. Okay, question answered? Good.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. And same with, yeah, pretty much everything that is from something we have installed is in curly brackets. Okay, so let's get back to the menu. So those are all components that I am bringing in from React Bootstrap that I'm going to use below. I'm also going to import link again because remember I want to click on something to bring me to a detailed page of the coffee I'm looking at. And that comes from React Router DOM. It's the same link that we're using in home that we did with our button. So we're going to have the same kind of concept in our menu page. And now I'm just going to copy and paste, and we are going to read through this and figure out what's going on. Let's see. I need to make sure to get. I took like all day today putting this together only because I haven't been in this library for a while. Not all day, sorry, maybe like an hour. Okay, so here I am making a row. These are like based on the viewport size, how many items you see in each row based on how like wide it is. But that's something that comes with this row tag. And then so this is the important part, and this is what you'll use a lot. I take my copy data that I'm getting from the API and I'm mapping it out. And I mapped it out. Each copy I'm taking, first I made an ID for the key for this column, and then I made a card. And with each card, so now let's look at our data again. This is what I'm getting. This is what coffees is this list of all these things. So when I map out, I'm saying for each, like basically dictionaries, for each item in this list, which we've identified each item is going to be C. Now we can use different elements in this dictionary because we've identified each of these list items as C. So to access the value of something in a dictionary, we just dot, right? C.id. So this list item .id will give me 5. C.image for this is going to give me this URL. And then, so right here, what is this? What am I doing here? It's, yeah, I have these ands in here, right? So that makes me think that I'm doing something that I need to have dependent on another thing, right? So then what do we think I'm doing in this? What's the blanket phrase that I'm doing right here? I showed 3 different ways to do this, I think last week in class or the week before. All right, conditional rendering here. So if I'm conditionally rendering this, what is this? What am I conditionally rendering? And then what is that item that I'm rendering dependent on? Don't know if everybody or anybody else is here at this point. All right, Art, give it your best shot. What do you think I am rendering based on a certain condition?
Well, it looks like you're going to take the API image and attach it to the title of the card and then I guess and then they all combined become the new C dot image.
So close. Okay, so with our conditional rendering, we have like a dependency is the first thing. And then we have our 2 ands, and then we have the component or element that we want to render. So for this, you got it right that we're taking this like this card, the coffee image, and we're actually making it so source, if there's a source, usually that's like an image source. This just card.image is fancy for this bootstrap stuff I'm pulling in. So this is making the card image that coffee image. But it's not doing this unless if there is a coffee image that exists. So it's checking this first. It's saying, is there a coffee image? If there is, then go ahead and render this. That's why we have this and. So I'm doing this in case the image doesn't work. So if there's no image or they don't give a URL, we're not going to show a card image. All right, good job. Conditional rendering, where you were taking that image and throwing it in there. We also have a card body, and so this card body, all that stuff is just React Bootstrap. You just gotta look at the documentation to figure this stuff out, and you guys will find that out on your own when you're building your own sites. I gave it a title, which is going to be the coffee.title, which is the name of the coffee. And this is all from my API. I looked at what I get back from my API call, and I see that I can grab each coffee image, title, description, ingredients. And so I'm using information here from each coffee item that I pull back. And the key is also that map. I'm mapping through this list of coffee items. So it's a list of dictionary coffee items. Okay, so we have our title is going to be the name of the coffee. The text is going to, so this one, I did also, I'm seeing if there is a description. And if there is, I am only taking like the first 90 characters of it. Otherwise, if there's not a description, so this is a ternary or like a either or type thing. So is there this description, then slice it and give me the first 90 characters. Otherwise, just put down a tasty cup if there's no description with it. And then I've also thrown in a button with that link that's linking to. Now this is what is different. So this one has menu slash, and then we can see this $, curly brackets, c.id. So this is, we know that the $, and then the curly brackets in an F string is letting us pull in a JavaScript variable, right? This is bringing in the coffee.id, which we have right here. So each of these have an ID, and your information that you have in your Postgres database that you write with your Django REST framework, all those will have IDs as well, right, that are unique. So with this, I'm saying when you click this button underneath this specific coffee item, go ahead and bring me to menu / whatever that coffee ID is. So if I clicked the button under this one, it would bring me to menu /5. And we saw that as long as we do menu / a number, it will bring up our detail page and show coffee detail. So let's take a look at how this looks so far. What's going on there? Our get is not working. Oh, 500. Okay, so that's not on our end. That's on the other side. So if you see a 500 or a 502, it's an issue with the server on the other end. So, which get is that? 21? Is it we may have hit some sort of limit. Let's go ahead. I'm not gonna slice it. Let's see if now. Wait, response. See if I can just this is okay. So it lets me hit that endpoint still. So it's just something with my, let me pull up my other one I worked on and see if I wrote it the same way. Fetch data async, try, we're gonna set the loading to true, response, await, fetch, data, await, response.json, set copies, data.slice, yep, we did that. Or if I need a space in there for some reason, probably not. Catch error, set error. I'm gonna take out the console log. You know what? Let's just Control C this and start it again and see if that helps. Why? Okay, let's read our console and see what's going on. All the fun things that we have to do. Oh, looks like it's something wrong with my import. Maybe? Unexpected token. Okay, I'm missing something somewhere. From where? Menu. Let's look at menu. From React, Bootstrap. Okay, that was probably the issue. Okay, let's close this and try again. There we go. Okay, so had we just looked at our console before, instead of blindly trying to guess where we went wrong, we can see that it says, keeps pointing to this React Bootstrap, and I'm like, what the heck, what? And then it says here, unexpected token, which usually means you're missing some character somewhere. So then everything else is kind of messing up and not recognizing what it is. Okay, so that's what fixed that. So now when we go to our menu, oh, look at that. We can see everything's mapping out nicely. Each item in the list is mapping out to have that card, and it has a title and a description, the first 90 characters, and then a details button. And when we click this, this should bring me to menu / whatever ID this copy is. And we can see that it does. It brings me to menu /5. Same thing with espresso is menu /6. Okay, so that's working perfectly. And that's the beauty of using map, is we can go through that list of API data and just manipulate it however you want using different values from that data. So we just pulled out the image and put it as a card image. We pulled out the title and put it in between these HTML tags for title. So you can do whatever, and I've wrapped it in parentheses here. So everything within these parentheses, we are doing to every single item in this list that we got back from our API. Learn map, learn it well. It saves you so much time with React. Okay, so now let's get to the copy detail page. So this is going to be interesting because right now, when I click on that page, and it brings me here, it goes to menu/5. I want, when I click Americano, I want Americano's details right here. So how are we going to do that? Have we learned to do that yet? Do we know how to grab specific ID information? So a lot of times when you made your endpoints, you would probably have a different endpoint to hit, right? You would like grab that ID and do another API call probably on this page to that new endpoint that has just the details. But I don't have that option here because my API just, yes, art, before I get too much further.
Would you use the props and pass the information down to the child?
So sort of, but there's no way to pass it really because I'm navigating from this page. So that's a good thought, and that would be a good go-to if I was like calling that component, but I'm not, I'm just linking to the page. So what we can do is, let's come to this copy page. We can do something called use params. So it is a parameter. I'm right. I thought it was something else. We need to import it though. So we're going to import used params from React Router DOM. And we're going to have a link in this one too, because I made a link back to the home or the menu page. So use params lets you grab parameter. Look, we can see it returns an object of key value pairs of the dynamic params from the current URL that were matched by the routes. So that's a lot of words to say. Let's go back and look at our, where is it? Our app.jsx. Our parameter that we have set on our route says that we're getting an ID. So then in our coffee thing, we're going to have a parameter called ID because that is what we named it. In our route, we said, hey, there's going to be parameters at the end, and that's what this little colon is here, signifying there's going to be some parameters that we're throwing on here, and it's going to be, you can grab them using the name ID. So this ID value is going to be equal to use params. And that just means, hey, look in the URL and grab what is the ID in that URL, which we've identified ID is the last number or the last thing on the URL. So that will be assigned to ID variable. To safeguard and be extra sure that it's not going to do anything weird, I'm going to go ahead and make this a number just so we can know it's a number for sure. So now I am taking that ID that we've pulled from the URL parameter, and I'm making sure it's a number. So now I'm going to filter through my data before I use it. Again, typically this is where you would do another API call to your detail endpoint. If you have like a detail / number or ID, you would take this and just do another API call, throwing in that ID number at the end, or however you set that up. But I've got all the information I can get, so I'm just going to filter now. So the coffee that I want is going to be this coffees. See, remember we're passing down all that data that we have, our coffees. I'm going to find in this list where the coffee ID is equal to the ID number. And then we're going to go ahead, if it doesn't exist, we're going to add on this pipeline here to say then just make it null if it doesn't exist. Okay, so I'm taking the parameter number that I've got on the URL, which is going to be like 5 for that Americano. I am making sure it's a number, and then I'm saying, hey, look through all that data that we passed in as props, find that list item where the ID is equal to this ID parameter. So now I am going to just copy and paste the rest of this, and we can walk through it real quickly. Okay, so not that much down here, but let's take a look. So here I've got a link back to the menu because a lot of times when you navigate somewhere, you also want something to get you back to where you were, not go home or click on the menu button. So this is just a quick, easy get back there. Again, it's a link to /menu. Then I've got the name or the text in between there. Okay, some more conditional renderings. So this is loading. I want to make sure that nothing pops up here before it's loaded. So if it's loading, I want to have just the whole thing to say loading on it. And if it's not loading and we get a coffee, sorry, if it's not loading and there's no coffee returned in our props here, then go ahead and just say, it's not found. But if we do get a coffee, and more conditional rendering, every time you see ands, automatically think, oh, conditional rendering. So if we do get a coffee, then go ahead and make, here I have the coffee image. The source is going to be, see, we've set the coffee that we're working with is set right here. We've identified that up here. So now we can grab its image, we can grab its title, and then I'm taking the ingredients as well and making it into this little array thing. It's cute. And I am mapping those ingredients out as little badges with a description. Okay, any questions there? Let's go ahead and come back here and we'll see. So we're going to get an error and we'll have to figure out why. Okay, so what is my console telling me is the issue? Can you see that?
Your loading is not defined.
Loading is not defined, but so I'm using loading and it looks like it's working, but what did I not do?
Maybe import a loading function.
Yeah, well, we're on the right track. So it's not a function, but it is a state that I set up out here that I'm manipulating in this, right? In my fetch.
Yeah.
So
You didn't import it.
yeah, I didn't pass it down as a prop to the component that's gonna use it. So I can't just import the state up here. We have to pass it as a prop, right? And I assume that's what you meant by importing it.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go ahead and throw it in here. Let's just say, loading is going to equal that loading state that we have up here that we are manipulating here. So when we pass it down as a prop, it will see the changes that this does to this. I think I had the loading on this one too. I don't have it there anymore. So now, where was that? It was in our coffee detail. So now we're not only getting coffees, but we're also getting loading. And then let's go ahead and see if it works. That should work, right? I just passed down loading the state as a prop. And now I'm referring to that state here. That state changes based on this API call. So it should just, I mean, when we come home, loading should be already set back to false because we've gotten everything. Like when we hit this initial page, we've got all the data we need for everything else right now. Now let's go to menu. Let's click on our Americano, which is /5, and we can see it effectively found that it went through our list of API data, which I have lost where it went here. Oh, why do I have two? I'm on both pages. Oh my gosh, so many open. Okay, so we can see it went through our list here and it grabbed all the different items we told it to grab or in each of these dictionaries and is throwing it up on the screen like we want it to with our map. And then this little button there brings us back to home because it's a link linking us back to that route menu. And that is our application. Any question at any point of what we went through today? The main things I'd like you to take away is how we did our routes. And then I went ahead and used this, like this link to is going to change based on whatever link you're using, whether it be regular HTML linking or if you're using like a third-party library to help you make your app look pretty. Other than that, we used our API call out here, which like Cisco said, you would typically move into another component, or I think it's something different to where you store the API calls. And then import that in and just call that. And then we pass down our props into our different components. And yep, any questions?
Tiffany, will you pass down or put the information in Slack as far as like your code?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll actually create a repo of this. It'll be easier than doing all these different pages. So I'll create a GitHub repo and share that link shortly. Yep, just make so this browser router and these routes, that I think is going to be the easiest way for y'all to do routing in your application to different pages. So that is what I wanted to focus on. And then of course how to manipulate. And I want to touch on maps as often as I can because it is amazing for your code. All right, well, let me stop recording and we will go over the challenge real quickly.